The rain fell hard on the metal landing pad, each drop hissing against the cold surface. Thick red clouds rolled above, glowing with lightning that flashed like angry fire. The alien Alpha stood tall in the storm, a massive creature of silver fur and golden eyes. His breath came out in heavy clouds as he looked down at his 3 small cubs huddled near his feet. Behind him, his warship waited, engines burning like blue suns. Its ramp was open, wind roaring through the air. The humans stood nearby, watching in silence. None of them understood what was happening, but they all felt the weight of it. Something deep, something final. Captain Hayes, leader of the human outpost, stepped forward. "Alpha Drav," he called, raising his voice over the storm. "If you leave them here, they'll be under human protection." "But why? What's coming?" The Alpha turned his golden eyes toward the human. His voice was low, calm, but filled with something old. Fear. "Teach them," he said. "Teach them what it means to survive." That was all he said. Nothing more. No explanation. "Oh, goodbye." The cubs whimpered softly, pressing close to their father's legs. The smallest one, eyes bright blue, reached up and grabbed his hand. "Father, come with us." The Alpha knelt down. For a moment, all the war and storm disappeared. He placed his massive hand on the cub's head. "No, little one. I have to face what I created. But you will live. You will learn." His eyes lifted toward Captain Hayes again. "Protect them, human, even if it costs you everything." Then he stood, turned, and walked up the ship's ramp. The cubs cried out, but soldiers held them back gently. The Alpha didn't look back. The ramp closed with a hiss and the ship rose into the storm. The engines thundered, lighting the clouds blue and red as it vanished into the dark sky. Silence fell. Only the rain and the small sounds of the cubs remained. One of the Marines whispered, "Did he just abandon them?" Captain Hayes didn't answer. His jaw tightened as he watched the clouds. Something about that farewell felt wrong. Too heavy, too sudden. "Bring them inside," he said finally. "And somebody get Dr. Lyra. She'll know what to do." The cubs resisted at first, growling, eyes full of anger and fear. But when the humans didn't hurt them, they slowly followed, shivering from the cold. Inside the base, the humans tried to make them comfortable. Warm blankets, small lights, soft food. The smallest cub refused to eat, just staring out the window toward the storm where their father's ship had vanished. Dr. Lyra, a biologist who had studied the Alpha's kind for years, knelt beside them. "You're safe here," she whispered. "No one will harm you." The cub blinked and looked at her, and confused. "Safe, humans? Don't fight us." She smiled sadly. "Not today." Outside, lightning flashed again. The base sensors beeped, detecting strange movement near orbit but too faint to identify. The crew ignored it, thinking it was just storm interference. That night, when the humans slept, the cubs stayed awake. The oldest, Kyle, climbed to the viewing deck and looked at the stars. His fur shimmered faintly in the moonlight. He whispered to his siblings, "He's not coming back." The smallest one whimpered. "How do you know?" Kale's eyes glowed gold. "Because I heard his voice in my mind before he left. He said, 'Forgive me.'" The wind howled outside the dome. Somewhere in the dark sky, far beyond the clouds, the Alpha's ship flew into unknown space, toward something only he knew was waiting. And as Kale looked at the stars, he felt it. A faint, distant roar carried through the void. It wasn't thunder. It was a warning. Something was coming. Something that even the Alpha feared. Days turned into weeks, and the storm outside the human outpost finally faded. But inside, the storm was still alive, in the hearts of the 3 alien cubs. They missed their father. They didn't trust the humans. They barely spoke. And when they did, it was in low growls that echoed through the metal halls. Captain Hayes had no idea how to handle them. He was a soldier, not a babysitter. But Dr. Lyra, the biologist who had spent half her life studying alien behavior, saw something in their eyes. Not anger, not hatred, just pain. "They're not wild animals," she told the captain one morning. "They're children. Scared children." The captain sighed. "Children who could break steel doors if they wanted to." Lyra smiled faintly. "Then we teach them why they shouldn't." And so began the slow, strange friendship between the humans and the Alpha's cubs. At first, the cubs avoided everyone. They refused to eat human food, refused to sleep on the soft beds, refused to speak. But humans are persistent creatures. Lyra visited them every day, bringing small gifts, puzzles, holographic toys, and once an old earth ball. When she rolled it toward the youngest cub, it blinked, confused. Then it pushed it back. The ball rolled across the floor, bumping her shoe. Lyra smiled. "That's how it starts," she whispered. "That small act changed everything." Soon the cubs began to explore. They followed the soldiers in the gym, watched engineers fix machines, and listened to humans tell stories of Earth. They learned words: food, friend, home. The oldest, Kyle, learned fastest. He watched how the humans worked together, how even the weakest human was protected by the group. That idea fascinated him. Among his kind, only the strong survived, but here everyone fought for each other. One evening he saw two Marines sparring, not to kill but to train. When one fell, the other helped him up. Kale tilted his head. "You help your enemy?" he asked. The Marine laughed. "He's not my enemy, kid. He's my partner. We fight better together." Kale said nothing, but something in his golden eyes changed. Days became months. The cubs began training with the humans, learning not only to fight, but to think. Dr. Lyra designed lessons that mixed human tactics with alien instincts. She used games, chess, simulation battles, even Earth War documentaries. The cubs were quick learners. Too quick. One day, during a simulation test, Kale outsmarted the system, creating a trap that even the base's AI didn't predict. He smiled proudly, his fangs gleaming. Captain Hayes frowned. "That's not possible," he muttered. "He tricked the AI like a human commander." Lyra looked at Kale and whispered, "Or maybe better." From that day, Kale began to think differently. He didn't just want to survive. He wanted to understand. He studied human history, their wars, their mistakes, their victories. He read about leaders who fought not for power but for peace, and for the first time he saw why his father left him here. Maybe the Alpha didn't abandon them, maybe he was trying to save them. But peace never lasts long on the edge of the stars. One quiet night, the base's outer sensors blinked red. Lieutenant Reed, on night duty, checked the screen. "Dr. Lyra," he called. "You'd better see this." Lyra hurried over. The readings showed strange energy bursts near the outer system, faint but organized. A pattern. A signal. Could it be pirates? Reed asked. Lyra zoomed in, decoding the sequence. Her face went pale. "No, this isn't human." The cubs, hearing her voice, rushed into the control room. Kyle stared at the symbols on the screen. Sharp, rhythmic, ancient. He recognized them instantly. "It's from home," he whispered. Lyra looked at him, confused. "Your planet?" Kyle nodded slowly. His golden eyes darkened. "They are calling for war." Outside, the stars flickered, as if something massive moved beyond sight. The humans didn't yet know what that meant, but Kyle did. He felt it deep in his bones, that low, distant howl through the void, the same one he'd heard the night his father left. And now, it was coming closer. The next few days were heavy with silence. No laughter from the soldiers, no music from the rec room, no sound but the constant hum of the station's power core. Everyone had seen the strange signal, and everyone felt the same chill crawling through their bones. Dr. Lyra barely slept. She spent hours trying to decode the transmission, her eyes red from staring at holographic lines of alien code. The message repeated every 7 hours, short, sharp, cold. It wasn't random. It was a call. The cubs watched her work. Kale stood beside her, his tail flicking slowly. "You shouldn't listen," he said softly. "They're not calling for us." Lyra turned to him. "Then who are they calling for?" Kale didn't answer. His gaze drifted to the stars outside the viewing deck, dark and endless. "They're calling for death." Captain Hayes gathered the crew in the command room. "Until we know what's going on, no one leaves the station," he ordered. No patrols, no signals sent back to Earth. We're dark until further notice. He looked at the cubs. "That includes you three." Kale's ears twitched, but he said nothing. The youngest cub, Mira, looked confused. "Why hide?" she asked. "Humans fight." "Always fight," Hayes smiled weakly. "Sometimes, little one, the smartest fight is the one you don't start." Kale tilted his head. "Our kind doesn't hide." "Maybe that's why your father left you here," the captain said quietly. The room fell silent. That night, Kyle couldn't sleep. He climbed to the top of the observation dome, where the stars looked close enough to touch. The air was cold and thin, and the station's shields shimmered faintly in the darkness. He remembered his father's eyes, the quiet fear in them. The way he'd said, "Teach them to survive." But survive what? Then it came again, the hum. Deep, low, like the sky itself was growling. The stars rippled, a distortion wave, faint but visible. Kale's golden eyes widened. He ran to the control room. "Lyra, it's back!" Lyra rushed in, pulling up readings. The data scrolled fast, full of strange alien energy. "It's not just a signal anymore," she whispered. "Something's entering the system." The radar lit up. Dozens of small objects at first, then hundreds. Captain Hayes arrived seconds later, his voice sharp. "What's our count?" "Too many," Lyra said. "Too fast. They're coming through a jump rift." Hayes clenched his jaw. "Dravari ships?" Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes. And they're broadcasting an old war code." Kale's claws dug into the metal table. "That's my people." "But this code—" He looked closer, his voice turning cold. "It's a purge order." The realization hit everyone at once. The Dravari weren't coming for peace. They were coming to erase the human station, and the cubs with it. Captain Hayes slammed a hand on the console. "All defense teams to stations. Activate the orbital shield." The sirens screamed through the outpost. Red lights flashed across every corridor. Soldiers ran, shouting commands, loading weapons. But amid all the chaos, Kale stood perfectly still. His breathing slowed. His pupils narrowed. He wasn't afraid, he was remembering. The scent of war. The rhythm of command. The training his father once gave him before humans ever came into their stars. "Kyle," Lyra said, touching his arm. "You need to stay safe." He looked at her, calm and certain. "No, I need to see what they've become." Through the glass of the main viewport, the first enemy ships appeared. Black, sharp, and alive with red light. The Dravari fleet moved like predators, sleek and silent. And at the center of it, a massive flagship shaped like a blade. On its hull, a single mark glowed, the Alpha's crest. Lyra froze. "That's your father's symbol." Kyle stared at it for a long time. His voice was quiet but heavy. "No, it was." Outside, the fleet broke formation. Hundreds of drop pods launched toward the planet's surface, burning through the sky like falling stars. Inside the outpost, the alarms screamed again. Mira clung to Kale's arm. "Are they coming for us?" Kale didn't answer. He watched the pods fall, his mind racing, his heart pounding with something between rage and fear. Finally, he whispered, "They're not just coming for us. They're coming for everything." The humans prepared to fight. The cubs stood beside them, not as children anymore, but as something in between human and beast. And far above, beyond the smoke and light, the Alpha's old flagship moved closer, carrying a secret none of them were ready to face. The first explosion tore through the silence of dawn. The human outpost shook as red light filled the sky, fire raining down from orbit like falling suns. The Dravari fleet had arrived, and this time there would be no warnings, no mercy. Inside the control room, sirens wailed. Soldiers shouted orders, lights flashed, and the sound of boots hitting metal echoed like thunder. Captain Hayes barked into the comms. "All hands to battle positions. Evacuate civilians to the lower hangar. Shields at full power, now." The humans moved fast, but the storm came faster. Outside, Dravari dropships cut through the clouds, black and sleek like hunting beasts. They landed in waves, claws digging into the ground. Armored soldiers poured out. Tall, scaled, their armor glowing with the same symbol that once belonged to the Alpha. The cubs stood at the viewing deck, watching the invasion with wide eyes. Kale's fur bristled. "They're coming for us," he whispered. Dr. Lyra turned to him. "Then you stay here." "That's an order." Kale shook his head. "Humans taught us more than hiding." His golden eyes burned. "You taught us how to fight for others." Before she could stop him, Kyle and his siblings sprinted down the hall, claws scraping the floor, their bodies moving with terrifying speed. On the outer defense wall, chaos ruled. Explosions rocked the ground as soldiers fired railguns and plasma rounds into the sky. One Dravari ship crashed near the perimeter, sending fire and smoke in all directions. Through it, Kale leapt, his roar cutting through the battlefield like a blade. "Kale, get back," a Marine shouted, but it was too late. The cubs were already fighting. Kale tackled a Dravari soldier twice his size, claws flashing. Mira darted between the rubble, pulling a wounded human out of the blast zone. The youngest, Ren, grabbed a fallen rifle and tried to mimic the humans, missing half his shots but hitting enough to make the enemy hesitate. The soldiers couldn't believe what they were seeing. These weren't frightened cubs anymore. They were warriors, a mix of human courage and Dravari instinct. Captain Hayes watched from the command post, his jaw tight. "Get me visual." The screen flickered, showing Kale leading a squad of Marines through smoke and chaos. He wasn't just fighting, he was commanding. His voice was calm, clear, and cold. "Left flank, pressure! Center, hold fire until my mark." His orders came with human precision but alien instinct. When the enemy broke formation, Kale struck, a perfect ambush. Lyra stared at the screen. "He's doing what we taught him. He's using human tactics," Hayes nodded slowly, "and improving them. But victory came at a cost." Another explosion ripped through the wall. A wave of Dravari warriors charged forward, faster, stronger, unstoppable. A plasma blast hit near Kale's squad, throwing him back. He hit the ground hard, smoke rising from his armor. When he opened his eyes, the horizon was fire. In that moment, something inside him snapped. He stood, lifted his head, and roared, not in fear but in defiance. The sound rolled across the battlefield, deep and thunderous. Even the Dravari paused. For the first time, they saw something they couldn't explain. One of their own, fighting beside humans. A human sergeant raised his rifle beside Kyle and shouted, "For Earth." Kyle answered, "For both worlds." And the battle raged again. Hours later, the outpost stood on the edge of ruin. Half the shields were gone, power failing, and ammunition running low. The humans prepared for a final stand. Lyra knelt beside Kale, who was covered in ash and blood but still standing. "You saved them," she whispered. Kyle looked at her, eyes glowing softly. "No, they saved me first." Before either could speak again, the communication console blinked. A transmission was coming through. Encrypted, ancient, and unmistakably Dravari. Captain Hayes opened it. A holographic image flickered to life above the table. The face of the Alpha. Lyra gasped. "He's alive?" The hologram's eyes burned with sorrow. His voice was quiet but powerful. "If you are hearing this, then the war has begun. I failed to stop it. But you, my children, you can." Kale's heart froze. His father's image flickered, reaching out like a ghost from the past. "Lead them better than I did." Then the message ended. The room fell silent. Only the hum of dying power filled the air. Kale stood tall, his claws tightening into fists. The Alpha's cub was no longer a child. He was a commander now, and the next battle would be his. Smoke filled the control room. Sparks danced from broken wires, and the air smelled of metal and ash. The hologram of the Alpha still shimmered above the table, fading, flickering, struggling to hold its shape. Everyone stared, silent and frozen. Dr. Lyra was the first to move. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "Alpha Drav, what happened to you?" The hologram turned its glowing eyes toward her, then to Kale. "You have grown," it said softly. "If you are seeing this, I am gone. But my choice, my sin, lives through you." Kale's chest tightened. His claws curled unconsciously. "You left us," he whispered. "You made us believe you abandoned us." The Alpha's expression darkened. "Because I did. Not from hate, from fear." The hologram pulsed, projecting fragments of a memory. Images filled the room. Dravari cities burning, soldiers cheering for conquest, and war machines rising like mountains. The Dravari had turned into what the Alpha once swore to destroy. Monsters with no honor, no soul. "I led them once," the Alpha's voice echoed. "But when I saw what we had become, I tried to stop it. They called me a traitor. They would have killed you and my cubs, to punish me." Kale's eyes widened. His heart pounded in his chest. "I left you with the humans," the Alpha continued, "because they remember something we forgot. Mercy. They are weak in body, yes, but strong in spirit. I hoped you would learn from them what I could not teach you. The strength of compassion." Lyra wiped tears from her face. The soldiers behind her stood silent, understanding the truth of the Alpha's choice. The hologram flickered again, growing unstable. The Alpha's final words came through static. "When the Dravari come, they will destroy everything. Unless you make them remember who they once were. Lead them better than I did, Kale. Lead them home." The image shattered into light and vanished. For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the sound of distant gunfire and collapsing walls filled the air. Kyle stood motionless, staring at the empty space where his father's image had been. His siblings, Mira and Ren, moved beside him, waiting for him to speak. Finally, Kale whispered, "He didn't abandon us." "He believed in us," Lyra nodded. "He wanted you to be something new, not just Dravari, not just human. Something better." Captain Hayes stepped forward. "Well, whatever that is, we're running out of time. The Dravari ships are regrouping. We've got one last defense before they wipe this place off the map." Kale looked up, his golden eyes burning with calm fire. "Then we don't defend," Hayes frowned. "You planning to surrender?" Kale shook his head. "No, we lead." Within an hour, the humans and cubs were working together, a strange, beautiful sight. Engineers and alien claws rebuilt defense drones side by side. Marines handed plasma rifles to Dravari prisoners they had captured earlier, offering them freedom in exchange for honor. Some refused. Some didn't. Kyle moved among them, commanding with quiet strength. "You follow me now," he said to the captured Dravari. "Not because I am stronger, but because I remember what we were before war made us blind." One of the alien soldiers, scarred and bitter, hissed, "You fight beside humans." "You shame us," Kale's voice was steady. "No, they taught me what we forgot. That courage isn't killing, it's standing for something worth saving." The soldier lowered his gaze, shamed but silent. When the next attack came, it was worse than before. The Dravari flagship descended through the clouds, firing plasma bolts that lit up the entire sky. But this time the defense was different. The humans didn't fight alone. Kale's new legion, human soldiers, alien defectors, and the Alpha's cubs, fought together in perfect rhythm. Human strategy, Dravari strength. The battlefield became a storm of fire and courage. Kyle fought on the front line, moving like lightning, leading his soldiers through smoke and chaos. At his command, defense turrets turned into ambush traps, an idea born from human war games. The enemy began to falter. For the first time, the mighty Dravari were confused, fighting an army that was both them and not them. Hours later, when the last blast faded, the sky was quiet. The flagship retreated to orbit, wounded and burning. Captain Hayes stood beside Kale on the damaged wall, watching the sunrise through smoke. "You just did what every general dreams of," he said. "You made them retreat." Kyle's eyes stayed fixed on the horizon. "They'll come again. But next time they won't face just humans or Dravari." He turned slightly, his voice low but full of resolve. "They'll face us." And as dawn broke over the battlefield, Kale felt his father's presence not as a ghost, but as a promise. The Alpha's dream wasn't dead. It had just begun to rise again, reborn in the hearts of both species. The battlefield was silent now. The smoke hung low over the ruins, and the ground was still warm from fire. Broken ships lay scattered across the red plains, and the air smelled of dust and victory. But it was not peace. It was the quiet before something greater. Kyle stood on the outer wall, his armor cracked, his fur streaked with ash. Around him, humans and Dravari soldiers, once enemies, worked side by side to rebuild. Some patched wounds, others cleared debris. For the first time, the outpost was more than a base. It was a symbol. Captain Hayes approached, limping slightly but smiling. "Never thought I'd live to see this," he said, watching a human engineer and a Dravari mechanic arguing over the same machine like old friends. Kyle gave a small, tired smile. "Neither did I." Hayes handed him a datapad. "Intel just confirmed what we feared. The enemy's flagship is regrouping. They've called for reinforcements, the full fleet." Kyle looked at the stars, calm but unyielding. "Then we call ours." The captain raised a brow. "Ours?" Kale nodded. "Humans and Dravari who still remember the Alpha's code. Those who are tired of endless wars. Those who want a future." Hayes crossed his arms. "You think they'll follow you?" Kale's golden eyes glowed. "They already are." That night, Kale stood before the combined forces of humans and aliens. Hundreds gathered, and soldiers, medics, engineers, defectors. The wind howled across the plains, carrying sparks from fires that hadn't yet died. Kale climbed onto a pile of broken armor plates, his voice rising through the night. "We were enemies once. Humans and Dravari. We fought, killed, and burned entire worlds because we were told to. But no more. Not tonight." The crowd fell silent. Even the storm seemed to listen. My father believed that mercy was strength. He died for that belief. And now his enemies come again, not for victory but for destruction. They think we will break. But they forget what humans taught us, that unity is the greatest weapon of all. A human marine shouted, "What are we now, Commander?" Cale looked over them, the wounded, the weary, the brave. His claws clenched around his father's old crest hanging from his neck. "We are one pack," he said firmly. "One legion, human and Dravari, bound by fire, forged by loss. And we will make them remember our names." The crowd roared, a sound that shook the air like thunder. Humans raised their rifles, Dravari lifted their spears. For a moment, species didn't matter. Only purpose did. By dawn, the legion moved. Dravari pilots flew alongside human fighter wings. Alien engineers linked their energy cores with human shield systems, creating hybrid weapons that had never existed before. Every mind, every skill, every heart was united under one banner. Dr. Lyra watched from the command tower, her eyes full of pride and fear. "They've done what no treaty ever could," she whispered. Hayes nodded. "They've built a future in the middle of a war." The first battle of the new legion began at sunrise. The Dravari fleet descended again. Hundreds of ships darkening the sky, their red lights glowing like demons. Cale's command ship rose from the outpost, painted with both the human eagle and the Alpha's crest. Through the intercom, Cale's calm voice echoed, "Legion, this is Cale. Remember what we fight for. Not revenge. But tomorrow." The fleet charged. Space turned into chaos, blue plasma and red fire crossing in deadly beauty. Human ships fought with precision. Dravari fighters moved with animal instinct. Together they moved as one, a living storm. Cale's ship led the attack. He used every tactic the humans taught him: decoys, misdirection, ambushes. The Dravari armada, expecting brute force, fell into confusion. One by one, their warships began to fall. In the midst of the battle, Cale saw the enemy flagship ahead, massive, shadowed, and marked with the old crest of his father. He took a deep breath. "All wings with me," the Legion followed. The fight grew fierce, the sky alive with light and sound. As Cale's ship broke through the enemy lines, he opened the comms to all sides. Humans, Dravari, and enemies alike. "We are not your soldiers," he said. "We are what you should have been. We are the Legion, and we fight for both worlds." For the first time, some enemy ships stopped firing. Confusion rippled through their ranks. The flagship hesitated, then turned. Cale pressed forward, roaring, "Now! For the Alpha! For Earth!" The Legion struck together, human strategy and Dravari fury merging into one perfect blow. The flagship exploded in light, the sound echoing through the void like a victory song. Hours later, the smoke of battle faded. The surviving ships drifted silently under the stars. Cale stood at the viewport staring at the debris. "It's done," he whispered. Lyra's voice came through the comm. "You did it, Cale. You united them." He shook his head softly. "No, we all did. The Alpha only gave us the spark. The humans gave us the fire." Outside, the first light of a new dawn reached across the stars, shining on a fleet that no longer belonged to one species. It belonged to everyone. The Legion had risen and the galaxy would never be the same again. The war was over. The stars were quiet again, no longer torn apart by fire and fear. The great Dravari fleet that once darkened the skies now drifted in silence. Some destroyed, some surrendered. And at the center of that silence, the Legion stood victorious. Cale stood on the command deck of his ship, staring through the wide glass window at his father's homeworld. The planet glowed with red deserts and silver oceans, beautiful but scarred. For years, it had been ruled by fear, by those who thought mercy was weakness. Now that was about to change. Behind him, Captain Hayes and Dr. Lyra watched as the Dravari Council requested contact. The long war was ending where it began. Hayes crossed his arms. "You sure about this, Cale? You walk into that chamber, you might not walk out." Cale smiled faintly. "If we don't go, the war never ends. Someone has to show them what peace looks like." Mira and Ren, his siblings, stood beside him wearing the crests of both human and Dravari design. Together they looked like what the Alpha had dreamed of, a bridge between worlds. The shuttle descended through the red clouds of Dravar Prime. On the surface, thousands of Dravari soldiers stood in formation, their weapons lowered but their eyes filled with uncertainty. As the ramp opened, Kyle walked forward. The humans stayed behind, respecting the moment. The Dravari council waited in a great stone hall carved from the mountain, ancient, cold, and heavy with history. High above, banners of past wars hung like ghosts. Kale stepped inside. His claws clicked softly against the floor. At the center of the chamber sat the High Chancellor, an old Dravari with eyes like sharpened glass. His voice echoed through the hall. "You have returned, son of the traitor. You come with humans at your back. Why should we not end you here?" Kale's voice was steady. "Because you've already tried that and failed." A murmur rippled through the council. The Chancellor narrowed his eyes. "You bring shame upon our kind, Kale. You fight beside the weak." Kale raised his head. "No, I fought beside the strong. The ones who choose compassion over cruelty. The ones who fight for each other, not for power." He paused, his golden eyes sweeping the room. "You call them weak because they forgive. But that is why they will outlive us." The chamber grew silent. Even the guards stopped breathing for a moment. Kale reached into his armor and pulled out a small metal symbol, the Alpha's crest. It glowed faintly, reflecting on the cold stone walls. "This belonged to my father," Kale said softly. "He was not a traitor. He was the last Dravari who remembered what it meant to lead with honor." He placed the crest on the floor before the council. "When he left us with the humans, he gave us a gift, not weapons, not soldiers, but lessons. He showed us that unity is strength. And now," Kale looked up, his voice growing stronger. "Now the galaxy knows it too, outside." The skies trembled as the Legion fleet hovered above the planet. Hundreds of ships, human and Dravari, standing together under one banner. The Chancellor's gaze flickered toward the window, then back to Kale. His voice had lost its certainty. "You would have us kneel to them?" Kale shook his head. "No, you will stand with them, side by side, as equals." Mira stepped forward, her voice firm. "The age of war is over. Either join us, or watch as the galaxy moves on without you." The hall fell silent again. Then slowly, one by one, the council members rose from their seats and bowed their heads, not in defeat. In recognition, for the first time in their history, they were not bowing to power, but to peace. Later, as the suns of Dravar Prime set across the horizon, Kyle stood outside the mountain hall, watching the orange light spread across the sand. Captain Hayes joined him, hands in his jacket pockets. "So, what now, Commander?" Kyle smiled, eyes reflecting the twin suns. "Now we rebuild, not as humans or Dravari, just as people." Lyra approached with a soft smile. "Your father would be proud." Kale looked toward the stars, toward the quiet part of the sky where his father's ship had vanished long ago. "I hope he's watching," he whispered, because his dream finally came true. As night fell, the Legion ships lit up the heavens, forming new constellations above the reborn world. Children, human and Dravari, watched together, pointing at the glowing sky in wonder. And far beyond, in the endless dark of space, a single echo lingered, faint but powerful. "Lead them better than I did." Kyle closed his eyes, feeling that voice inside his heart. The Alpha's children had returned, not as cubs, not as soldiers, but as leaders, carrying the fire of two worlds into one future. And this time, the galaxy listened.